Thank you so much. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I always welcome the opportunity of talking about this subject. There's just a few of us, so I'm going to run through things informally. What I'll do is I'll go through everything that I need to say and maybe take questions at the end. When I'm talking, I'm going to be mainly focusing on women in abusive situations, but as Marian has said, you know, abuse happens to everybody. It happens to men, it happens in family situations, but predominantly my speech is sort of mainly related to women in abusive situations, abusive marriages, etc. So what do we mean by domestic abuse or domestic violence? Well, they're pretty much the same thing. The strict definition is any incident of threatening behaviour, violence or abuse, psychological, physical, verbal, financial or sexual, between adults who are or have been intimate partners or family members regardless of gender or sexuality. Okay, so all kinds of behaviour, and what's behind the behaviour is the desire of the perpetrator to have power and control over the victim. That is the underlying belief, that is the underlying goal in all of the scenarios, to have power and control. Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, so let's have a look at the different types of abuse. You may think it's only domestic abuse, domestic violence, if the person actually gets physically battered. That's not the case. Whilst that's often a feature of it, it doesn't have to be it. And I have people come to me in terrible situations and say, yes, but he hasn't hit me. And I say, I don't care that he hasn't hit you. He has terrified you. He has changed your life. He has destroyed your self-esteem, etc. So whilst physical injury can certainly be a part, it doesn't have to be a part of it. And here we are, you know, here we have the examples: grabbing, punching, shoving, slapping, hitting, biting, arm twisting, kicking, punching, anything like that. But also the threat can be just as powerful. You know, being slammed up against a wall with somebody coming into your face, threatening you, etc., can be as powerful as an actual injury. But yes, strangulation, very, very common. So withholding access to resources necessary to maintain health. Yeah, absolutely. So if you're in an abusive relationship, you're in an abusive situation, your abuser is not going to want you to be able to reach out and access any kind of support. So there's a variety of things that they may do to prevent you getting any kind of support. So, for example, they may come with you to every doctor's appointment, sit with you at all times so that you're unable to speak freely. They can affect your friendships by being difficult when the friends come round, or putting you under so much pressure that, you know what, you give up on the friends. It just becomes too much hassle and aggravation, and slowly, one by one, your friends stop calling, stop coming round, etc. And increasingly, you become isolated. They may also say, I know, let's relocate to Aberdeen or Aberystwyth or wherever you don't have family and friends. So you move with them, and then the only person that you really know there is your abuser. Therefore, they have much greater power and control, because remember, if you can access help, then you can get support. And if you can get support, then you can make choices about your life. And if you can say to somebody, he says I'm this, if you've got a friend, they can say, you know what, that's nonsense. You're not a bad mother. You're not the worst thing in the world. And that can challenge what he's feeding to us. So another form or another tactic, because I describe these as tactics that they use to have power and control, is sexually. They may force us to engage in acts that we don't want to do, be generally disrespectful of us. As I say, there's a whole list here of abuse that we may suffer, and you don't have to suffer from every part or every category, if you like. Your abuser may particularly use one form of tactic as opposed to another. So you don't have to tick all the boxes to be in an abusive relationship. I think that's really important. If you feel in the pit of your stomach that you are nervous and frightened of the person who you share your life with, you're in an abusive relationship. If you have to think before you speak every time to work out what is the reaction going to be, If your nerves are on edge when you hear the key in the lock, then you are in an abusive relationship. If you are not in an equally mutually respectful relationship, you are in an abusive relationship. Okay, can we go on to the next? Yeah. Okay, psychological head work, I believe, can be as painful as a slap or a punch. The bruise will lessen, the scar will heal, but the words that have been said to you go to your rubbish you are, how useless you are, how nobody else is ever going to love you, no one else will put up with you because you are scum of the earth, because you are the worst mother ever. You become so downtrodden that you believe you have no choice, you have no way out, and all you can do is carry on day in and day out. When the ladies come to me initially, there is a deadness behind their eyes where the whole spark of their life has been kind of extinguished. They look at the floor, they basically apologise for even being in the room with me. They say, I don't think I really should be here. I haven't really been abused. And I just look at them, and you can tell by talking to them, listening to them, how they absolutely should be there. And very gradually, when you hear their story, when it comes out, it can be shocking and horrifying. And then it is my great joy when I'm able to challenge that, support them, as Marian was saying, help them through it, and to see them come out the other side with the brightness comes back into their eyes and the joy comes back into their lives, and they start to think, you know what, I'm all right. I'm not what he says I am. I may not be perfect, but I'm good enough. And they start to move forward with their lives. So, yeah, psychological abuse can be horrendous. Intimidation, threatening, the threatening of harm, but all sorts of other threats. I'm going to tell social services what a dreadful mother you are. I'm going to tell your work what you're really like, so you then can't work. You lose your job, so you lose your money. You have no money, you go nowhere. Mind games, oh my goodness, yes, crazy making mind games. They move things, for example. You put cake there, he moves it, you come back, where's the cake? Don't know what you're talking about. You're mad, you know you're mad. So that it discredits any thoughts that you have about yourself and your situation. You think, well, maybe I am crazy. Maybe what he says is right. And of course, if he can make out that you're crazy, then he will do that to the police, to social services, to your GP, to anybody, so that when you say, do you know what he did to me? They'll say, well, I don't know. I mean, really, you know, she's a bit crazy, she's a bit unstable, she's a bit volatile, she's a bit... And this, again, will achieve power and control. You will be entirely discredited. So going back, threatening our children. Our children, you know, are generally the thing that we love most in the world. If you make a threat to our child, it goes to our core. If you say to us, if you leave me, I will hunt you down. Wherever you are, I will find you and I will kill you and your children. We're really going to think twice about taking any steps to leave. And sadly, we see in the press every week details of woman and child found murdered at an address, another man has been arrested, was known to them. That's all media code for she was in an abusive relationship and he murdered her. And I really wish the media would stop using I suppose they have to, but the kind of euphemistic language that they use. Call it, name it. You know, 2 women a week are murdered by their partner or ex-partner. And I say to my ladies in group, I say, we're talking here now, but there are 2 ladies in this country right now that are not going to be alive when we meet this time next week. And I think that brings home the shocking reality. So when they make threats, what do we think? Shall we take a gamble? Is he telling the truth? Will he do it? Maybe he will, maybe he won't, but we can't risk that because this is the lives of our children. And we've seen also those dreadful stories where he takes the children himself and drives into a river, whatever. He dies and the children die, you know. If I can't have you, nobody's going to have you, and you're not going to have your kids, and you're going to live for the rest of your life without your kids, and I'm going to make you pay. So these are not idle threats. Destruction of pets and property. There's a kind of a question check sheet, which escapes me now. I think it's Cada risk assessment form that's done by the police when they're called to any domestic violence, domestic abuse incident. And there's a number of questions that they ask, and then they do an assessment to see your level of risk. And one of them is the behaviour of the abuser towards pets. Can be very significant as to their general behaviour. So if you've got somebody who is being brutal to the dog or the cat or whatever, that is something to look out for in addition with everything else. But a general lack of empathy or any kind of compassion for a pet can be indicative of a state of mind. Also, very high risk is if they put their hands around a woman's throat, because to put their hands around your throat and threaten you, if they squeeze just a little too tightly for just a little too long, you're dead. And they, so these, I say there's a number of factors to consider, but these are just warning signs. So when I speak to a lady and she tells me any of these, I'm able to kind of assess and think she is at very high risk. And that's another thing that I say to my clients the whole way through is I want to overreact about your safety. So far, I have not, touch wood, lost a single client. But statistically, I will. I will have a lady that I help who is subsequently murdered. And that is my ultimate nightmare. So I say, even if you're not sure, overreact about your safety. In your home, with your children, where you are, with the police. Hope is not a method, okay? So take it very, very seriously. Similarly, obviously, I have clients who come to me who have realised they're in an abusive relationship and they want out. And I have to say to them, you have to be so careful, because when you're ending a relationship with an abuser, that is the time when he will ramp it up. He will escalate his violence and his behaviour because he's going for broke. You've changed, you're now not doing what you were told, you now can't be suppressed and put in your place like he used to be able to do. His old tactics are not working any longer, so he ramps it up, and that is the most dangerous time. So that's why if somebody is thinking of leaving, we have to put a safety plan in place. We have to look at how exactly we're going to see it all the way through. Because we have to, anticipate the worst, in effect. So let's have a look. Yes, stalking, mind games, stalking definitely, and the development of IT. iPhone, find my iPhone. So he comes up to you, darling, I love you so much. I want you to have this iPhone. Let me pay your bills, my lovely, you have it. And you think, oh, he's so nice, he's given me a lovely top-of-the-range phone, he must love me. Yeah, he might love you, but he's also going to know where you are 24 hours a day by activating the Find My iPhone app. So wherever you are, he's going to know. Also, there's been a great development in other kind of security surveillance gadgetry, be it cameras, be it listening devices. I mean, you may think, this is off the television, but actually it's not. The number of clients I have whose houses have been bugged, they've had tracking things put on their cars, because remember, he needs to know where you are every minute of the day. He needs to check on you. He needs to have power and control over you. So be wary of gadgetry. Blackmail, I've said a bit about, telling social services you're rubbish, telling your work, saying he's going to send round an email to all your contacts in your phone, or, to let all your friends and family know what you're really like, okay? And of course it can be just complete rubbish. In fact, it probably will be complete rubbish, but you run the risk of them hearing all of this rubbish about you. And, it makes you think, what, maybe I might just shut up and put up. Maybe I might just keep my head down and carry on doing this for another day, because you know what, I'm really tired. I'm tired of battling. I'm tired of trying to survive, and I just think it's too much. So you stay for another period of time. Okay, I've talked a bit about, the isolation, withholding access to the phone, taking the buggy in the back of the car and going off for the day when you've got a little one. You're not really going to be going anywhere, are you? Because even little ones get heavy after you've carried them for a while. I've had it where they've taken the person's shoes. I've had it where they painted the windows and blocked the doors so that she didn't know whether it was night or day. It's common for women in these situations to be agoraphobic. They literally go out so little that they're terrified when they do so. So it has a profound effect on them psychologically, mentally, physically. Constantly checking up, constant accompaniment. Emotional, the constant criticism. Whatever you do is not good enough. Whatever way you do it, it isn't right. The constant criticism, as it says, name calling, insults, and they can be awful names. Really, I don't know if we've got, I probably won't say too much because we might have some little ears around, but there can be some really gruesome names that the women can be called. Silent treatment, yes, sulking and non-sulking, and basically, and causing trouble between us and our children. Don't listen to mummy. What does mummy know? Mummy's stupid. Yeah, don't listen to mummy. Mummy's a whore. Mummy's whatever. So then what happens is we get abuse from him, and then the children start talking to us like we're dirt again. And you sort of think, I'm getting it from all angles as well. Is there any more? Yeah, go on to this one. We'll have a little. Okay, economic, maintaining total control over financial resources, absolutely. And this was the one I found crippling in my abusive situation, because I had no access to money, and how do you leave? How do you just leave him, as they say? Oh, why don't you just leave him? How do you just leave him when you think, I've got nowhere to live, I've got 3 children, aged 6, 4 and 2 at the time, what can I do? I could see no way out, no hope whatsoever. And he said to me, he was very clear, that if I didn't do as I was told, I'd be cut off without a penny. And I was so downtrodden at the time that I believed him. I thought, I can't do anything. I mean, as it was, over the years, I've come to realise that I can manage, I can cope, but that was only because I was given tremendous advice and assistance from a number of sources. There are benefits out there available. I would suggest that anybody who has got no money in this situation to go and see, if you possibly can, without getting in trouble with him, the Citizens Advice Bureau, and take good advice from them as to what your options are. But again, you have to be so careful, because he wants to know where you are, who you're talking to, why you're talking to them, what you were doing there. Forbidding employment, mucking up any job that you do have by turning up, having a scene, keep ringing, etc. If you really love me, you'd stay home with me today, etc. So, forced into do benefit, and then if they think you're not going to do as you're told, they're then going to report you to the benefits agency. So you're going to end up with all of that trouble and problem and a possible criminal record as well. Running up bills, spending, so you're in masses of debt, so you can possibly go bankrupt, etc. But the lack of, and having to justify and explain every penny that you spend. So you may have this, £20, well, what did you spend it on, where did you go? Why do you think we've got money for you to be spending it on yourself if you actually bought yourself a pair of shoes because the last ones had holes in? Can be very, very wearing to constantly have to explain yourself. Are there any more slides, or shall I just go back onto? Yes. Go back onto. So basically, these are all various tactics. Going back to the statistics. Obviously, I've talked about the fact that 2 women who are alive today will not be alive next Saturday in this country due to being murdered by their partner or ex-partner. So 1 in 4 British women will experience domestic abuse at some point in their lives. 1 in 4. So let's look in the room. I mean, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands or anything like that, although I would be one of them. That it is something that affects so many people, yet it is so hushed up. It is such a taboo. That when I started to find the courage to speak to people about what I was going through, they were really uncomfortable about it. It was like, oh, no. The other thing is, the abusers are normally incredibly charming and incredibly manipulative. They are very, very good. So that when he's in my face shouting at me, all 6'2" of him, telling me what kind of an awful mother I was, etc., and how horrendous I was, when there was a knock at the door, he was able to restrain his anger, walk to the door and go, hi, oh, thanks for dropping back those You know, that power drill. Yeah, I will have a drink down the pub soon, John. Yeah, cheers, no wonder. Close the door and come back to me. So anyone who says they cannot help the domestic abuse, cannot help it because they've got a temper, etc., that is rubbish. Abusers abuse because they choose to and because they can. It is an active choice that they make. So I don't care if they say they like it because of the fact they've got Gulf War syndrome, or the fact that he's had a drink, or the fact that he takes drugs, or the fact that he's got a very stressful job. This is how I explained away mine for a number of years, was it's a very stressful job and he has to be a bit arrogant to be good at his job. That's what it is, really. No, it wasn't. You know, he had a very traditional view of what I should be doing and not doing, and he got a kick out of treating me the way he did, and he chose to do that. So I'd be wary of any kind of excuses that are made by these men, or women, obviously I'm saying, but it definitely works both ways. So it's very, very prevalent. So when I spoke to a woman a few weeks ago who ran a company which, her clients were mainly sort of middle class women in Surrey, and she had a website and there was a community section on it, and I said, oh, could I please put something on it to do with domestic abuse? And she looked at me and she went, oh no, the clients that I have, no, they're not affected by domestic abuse. And when I picked my jaw off the floor, I said to her, it's 1 in 4, look around you in the room we're in. I said, and I'm one of them. And she was incredibly shocked. You know, that brings me to the point that domestic abuse does not just affect poor working class people living in an estate. She's getting battered when he gets back from the pub. That may be one part of it. But well-educated family law solicitors with so-called wealthy husbands living in Surrey also have it. It goes across, it really does, from the top to the bottom, men, women, it is everywhere. It's just that, as you were alluding to, you know, there's this cover-up, there's this, no, if I don't talk about it, it's not happening. You know, do I really want to face the fact that actually I'm in an abusive marriage? Because that means maybe I've got to do something about it, and maybe he'll be better. Because he's not always horrible. That's the other thing. They are not abusive all the time. Because if they were, one, we'd never have fallen in love and married them in the first place. And you know, you wouldn't stay with them. So there's an actual cycle of abuse, which I could detail, whereby they're lovely, you know, they're absolutely lovely, generous, kind, they say all the right things that we want to hear, we fall in love with them, etc. It is only when we've kind of they've got us hooked, if you like, that very gradually the abuse can begin, so you don't even really realise that it's happening. And then, as I say, the tension will build, and then there can be this outburst of abuse. And we're looking at them like, how can this be the same man that I was talking to 2 weeks ago, who loved me and promised me that he would always take care of me and how wonderful I was, is now raging in my face, calling me all the names under the sun, scaring me and scaring my children. And then after that, things would calm down. You'd think, oh God, has that actually passed now? Will it be okay? Will I be all right? So we kind of deal with the aftermath of the massive fallout, etc. Try and calm the children, try and get things back on an even keel. And they'll be all right for a while, and he'll be lovely again, and we'll think, do you know what, maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was a bit hormonal. Maybe it really wasn't that bad, was it? It wasn't, because he's lovely and they can't be the same person. And so it goes on, again and again and again and again. And there may be months when things are fine, there may be days when things are fine, but it's not constant, and that's the issue, is you keep thinking, well, maybe it's finished now, maybe he'll be lovely now going forwards. And if you've invested a lot in it, I mean, I don't know about you, but I certainly had the whole big white wedding with the bridesmaids, with the man, with the abbey. I was going to live happily ever after. And that was my life script. I had the 3 children, etc., and I was going to live happily ever after. And I was going to live happily ever after. Except I couldn't live happily ever after because he was hurting me and he was hurting the children. But I didn't want to give up on it, because I always work hard, and if I work hard, I succeed. But the harder I worked at this, it didn't matter. I wasn't succeeding. I couldn't make it work. And what also concerned me most of all was that my sons were watching and listening to their dad, and I thought, you know what if they do that to their wives when they're older? And my daughter, what if she thinks this is the way to have a functional relationship? And you know what, it was for them, not me, and it should have been for me, but it was for them that I actually said, enough, absolutely enough. And I have to say, I haven't looked back. You know, I am so happy now. I am on my own with my children, and I never wanted to be a single mum at all. But actually, do you know what? I was a single mum in the marriage because he wasn't doing anything. So actually people say, oh, how do you cope now? I cope so much better because I'm a single mum now, like I was then, but without the aggravation. I'm in charge of my money because I'm entitled to the benefits that I get. And okay, I'm not proud that I have to be on benefits, but you know what? I'm okay. I'm doing all right. I manage my money, I pay my bills, and I bring up my children to respect each other. So for me, it has been life-changing, and I'm so glad I did it. But I just wanted to sort of get across to you about how hard it was, because I didn't want to face the fact that that's what I was in. I was in denial for years about it. I just thought, oh, he's fine, he's stressed, he's this, he's that, he's whatever. But I had to face the toll it took on me. I had severe depression, I had anxiety. I was in a very bad way, and I had to have medical help for that. But because I had that medical help, I got to realise what was really going on. So it was worth it to come out the other side. Going back to the statistics, on average, a woman is assaulted 35 times before she seeks help. 35 times before she seeks help. And, you know, it's probably more. But I just think what a shocking statistic that is. So we were looking at the ones that are huge anyway, of the women that contact the police. But when you think of their history, it's really the tip of the iceberg. And I wish that women were able to, and men, definitely and men who were in abusive relationships, were able to seek help earlier. But there's a level of fear that you encounter when you're in this abusive relationship, which I describe it as like being paralysis. You literally can't move or speak because you're so scared. And if you're looking in from the outside, you don't get it. You think, what? But actually, it is very, very profound. Okay, so as I said, power and control is behind all types of abuse, and we've looked at some of the tactics there. Who is the abuser? Anyone. He can be on the board of governors. He can be CEO of somewhere. He can drive a bus. It is anyone. But usually very charming, very, very effective. So when the police are called, he's very good with them, you know, knows exactly what to say, or, you know, to get them on side, etc. Anything to discredit us. If, I'd say, and this is probably quite controversial, if they're in a role where you think, oh, they couldn't possibly be abusive, probably are. From the statistics of the clients that I've dealt with, they said, look, no one's going to listen to me because he's a headmaster. No one's going to listen to me. Exactly, that's what he's counting on. But I'm listening, and I listen, and I would say anyone can be it. Yeah, usually kind of self-absorbed, self-centred. He is the centre of his world, and everything is about him and his satisfaction and his needs and his wants, etc. Okay, so we had a bit of a talk about the effects of abuse, death and injury, mental health illness, very high, and then we self-medicate because we're in so much pain and to try and survive, so we drink. You drink too much. And then social services say you're an alcoholic. And then you're really up against it. And are you an alcoholic who's not taking the appropriate steps to protect your child? So very, very tough. We can, alcohol, substance abuse. But the effects of abuse also on the children. The children are in the house, they hear, they feel and they absorb. You are kidding yourself if you think that children are not affected by domestic abuse. They absolutely are, and it can be profound, the effects on them. I mean, obviously, if they come and try and stick up for you in the middle of a fight, they can get a slap, they can get hit by something. That's direct physical injury to them because of the abuse. But what is nearly worse is the psychological trauma of lying upstairs in your bed under the duvet thinking, when is he? I don't want to go to school because I want to know if Mummy's going to be all right. And they have a headache in their tummy and all this sort of thing. And they can't bring their friends back, you know, because what's it going to be like at home? So then they're lonely. And if we're depressed and downtrodden and worn out, exhausted, we might not be able to give them the level of care that they might need. You know, he may say, like happened to me, no, you're not going into that baby who's crying. No, you're not, you're just spoiling that baby. I forbid you to go into that baby that's crying. So I had to wait until he'd fallen asleep on the sofa to creep in to go to the baby. So that can affect our bond with our children, you know, oh, you spoil that kid, blah, blah, blah. But children need to be loved. They need to be cuddled. They need us to go to them when they need us. So the effects, it's not just us, it's the ripple that goes out. Okay, let's have a look now, okay, after I've upset everybody and made everyone feel absolutely dreadful. What do you do if you suspect a friend or a family member is in an abusive relationship? You listen in a non-judgmental way and you make it okay for them to speak, and you check that they're okay without probing and probing too much and without saying, oh, he'd never do that, would he? No, don't be silly. No, you're probably just a bit, you know. For God's sake, if someone has come to you and is trying to say to you that things are not great, just listen non-judgmentally and accept her experience. Believe her and be supportive. Do not say, well, if I was in that situation, I wouldn't put up with that rubbish at all and I'd just leave. Because frankly, that's so unhelpful. She cannot just leave. So don't tell her to just leave. Because it will also make her go quiet again and you won't hear what's really going on. And what's really important is that you continue to hear what's going on. Encourage them to make contact with the domestic abuse outreach team for that particular area. I'd say encourage, obviously while it's safe to do so, to look at stuff on the internet, you know, Refuge, Women's Aid. Those websites I looked at loads, and I kept reading the list of signs of being in an abusive relationship in the hope that I'd read one of them and think it isn't me. Because when I did read it, I thought, you know what, they've met him. They've met him and they've written it about my husband. Only everyone I spoke to said, no, they've written about theirs. So it was, and any time I doubted myself, I'd go back on the website and reread it and think, no, you're right, it is that, and it is that bad. Because, you know, my family didn't want this to happen. Oh, no, it's fine. You just need to work a bit harder at your marriage. Why don't you go out for dinner? Really? You know, when I got injured and I was black and blue on one side, a member of his family said he didn't really know which of our accounts to believe. Well, I'm the one black and blue on the left. He's not. The clue is probably there, you know? But families don't want this to be happening. Absolutely not. No, my son would never do that. Oh, no, you just don't love him enough. You need to try harder. How insulting? One person, and people come to it with their own agendas, don't they, who's been in a marriage that wasn't great. She said to me, well, my day, we stuck with things. We didn't give up. We kept going. And you know, I kind of thought that's a bit painful, because the braver thing was to go than to stay, really. So be aware of what other people bring to the conversation. It may not necessarily be the most unbiased, balanced advice that you need. Okay, so yeah, encourage them to reach out for support. And even if they're still staying in the relationship, you continue to be an accepting form of support to them, even when it's really driving you mad and you really think, for God's sake, get out of it. Just continue to be that source of support, because that is what that person needs. Looking at sources of support, I say lots of websites, there's lots of books. The police, you know, they have specialist units now for domestic abuse. I think the police are improving. You know, it varies between police forces, and it varies between police officers. You can get some that are really good, and then you can get some that are utter rubbish, but it does need to be reported. They do need to know what's going on. And now there's a new type of order that they can get called the DVPO, Domestic Violence Protection Order, whereby they go to court and get what is in essence a non-molestation order or an injunction, keeping him out for a period of time, maybe a month, while she gets a bit of respite to kind of, consider what her options are in safety. This is new and it's good because it's by the police. The police are applying for it, so it's not her. So he's not having to go at her, how could you do this to me, bitch? After all I've done for you and you're going to do this, etc. Because she's making the application. There's none of that because the police are doing it. Okay, so it's really good, it's really new. Obviously it's just a matter of persuading the police that they need to apply for that particular order. Otherwise there's non-molestation orders, which again are civil orders. The wording can vary, but basically keeping him away from the mother and the children for a particular period of time. They put a zone around them, if you like. And again, it's to get some respite, it's to get some support, because when they're constantly with us all the time, it's very hard for us to think clearly and to plan and to be safe. So there are orders out there. Okay, a little talk about the Freedom Programme. The Freedom Programme is a programme that was written by a woman called Pat Craven, who worked for the probation service, and she was working with abusive men, so men who had convictions of for domestic abuse, domestic violence, and she started to note that they kind of all operate in a very similar way. Coming back to what I said to you before about the list, they really do. So she's written a very good book called Living with the Dominator, and has turned that into a course. It's a 7-week course, 2 hours once a week for 7 weeks, and in it we look at the tactics that the abuser uses, what his agenda is and how he operates. And in doing that, the ladies can see what he's doing, and it kind of makes it less personal. I describe it as kind of Teflon coating them, so that when there's any abuse or whatever incoming, as in words and whatever, it kind of brushes off and goes back out, because she goes, you know what, I know what you're doing this. And that can take a lot of the heat and the force and the power out of it. And it also enables them to realise it's not their fault. They are not responsible for this, and that they are all right. And it builds their self-esteem and gives them more personal power. And I love running these courses because, as I say, the ladies come in at the beginning, they're looking at the floor, they don't want to speak, some of them can't speak out at all. And by week 7, we're having a laugh, we're having cake, we're having tea, and we're feeling great. We have hugs, we have tissues, and they feel like they can then, go forward at least with the information and feel just that bit better about themselves. And also because they're in a group, they're listening to other women's experiences, and they're thinking, do you know what, it's not just me, I really thought it was just me. And they offer support to each other, which is so powerful because it's coming from other people in the same situation. So Freedom Programme, at the moment I run them for the Domestic Abuse Outreach Team, they fund them. I'd like to do them every week. I would like to get to as many women as possible because I think it would make just such a massive difference. I nearly finished, honestly. You got me started, you see. Okay, so what do we need to do long term to break this cycle? We need to talk, like we're doing now, we need to talk about it. We need to say what domestic abuse is and that it's not all right. And, where possible, and it's safe to do so like I'm doing, say, it happened to me. To break the myth, to break the taboos, to teach our children not to be gender stereotypical, no man's work, woman's work, equality, because there's so much out there in the media that is still continues to perpetrate the thing about, woman's role is in the house or whatever, which is fine if the woman wants to be in the house. Yeah. But if she doesn't and she'd like to be doing something else, then she should have an equal opportunity to do that. And that's where I'm coming from, choice. I want women to have choice. I don't want my sons to think that this and this is women's work, or that and that is men's work. No, it's our work. It's work that needs to be done in the house. But it doesn't matter what sex you are, that's what needs to be. So we need to get it out there and to go into schools as well, because abusive relationships can start really young. It can be in schools, it can be 16, 15, 16-year-olds. So we need to get it out there so that everybody knows about it and talks about it. I think probably I've talked fair enough now, actually. I'm really happy to take all or any questions that you might have about it. And thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. I told you she's amazing. I saw you sorry, Catherine, just quickly. I will be more than happy to send this slide to everyone. So if I can ask you to give me your email address, there are sheets in front of you. If I have your email addresses, I'll send you this so you don't have to worry to write them down. I'll send you the slides and also the links to the audio of this if you would like me to. So there are sheets on the table. If you give us your email address, we'll be more than happy to.
And I've got cards here with my phone number on them and an email if you need to contact me about something. I was going to say, I don't know, obviously you can ask me questions, but if you know somebody in a situation like this and they're going to take legal advice, please go speak to the solicitor and make sure that they get domestic abuse, because some of them don't really understand it. And that really has a massive effect on the following cases, because you've got the divorce to deal with, you've got the child contact to deal with. And if you don't have a solicitor who understands domestic abuse, you're not really going to understand what he's trying to do when he's defending the divorce or when he suddenly makes the application for residence of the children. So, and I think that is a very valid point. So if you need any information about that, give me a call and I can always put you in contact with solicitors that get it, if you like. So, any questions?
Catherine, I wanted to ask you, underneath the issue of power and control, what's going on for them under that need? What is it? Are they from abusive backgrounds, or do they just have a gene? An abusive gene?
I'd say there's a mixture. The vast majority of abusive men that I have dealt with have had an abusive mother or father. So there's been the dynamics in that parental relationship where one has been abusive and the other one has been the victim. And it isn't always that the men are abusive, sometimes they can be the victims as well, but often, very often, that is the case. I mean, I'm not sure I've ever come across somebody who is really abusive who's come from a mutually respectful kind of parental dynamic. So I would certainly say there is that. I do think that it's very powerful, though, the roles that are demonstrated. And also, this is probably quite controversial, but in my experience, men whose mothers left them in childhood can be the most dangerous, narcissistic, psychopathic, terrifying. So if ever I hear from somebody that his mother left him when he was 5 or something, I think, oh hell, batten down the hatches. Now, I have nothing to back that up. I can't give you any evidence other than my own anecdotal experience. So I would say that, probably parental modelling. Sorry?
Learned behaviour.
Probably learned behaviour, and maybe with I wouldn't say it's genetic really. I don't know, but it's definitely learned behaviour. You know, if he see how dad talks to mum and what dad gets because he does that, you know, because they get a lot out of behaving the way they do. I mean, my husband, you know, because of how he was, would walk in the door after work like the great warrior returning. He would walk from the front door, land on the sofa, and he wouldn't move. He would expect his meals to be brought to him, he would expect me to deal with the children, etc. So quite a nice life for him, really, wasn't it? You know, he'd get up in the morning and think, right, what should I do? What would I like to do today? Oh, I'd like to go and do X. Not, well, little Johnny's got his geography homework still to do, but maybe I ought to do. So they get a lot out of it. So they see that the dad is sitting there like the great king, issuing proclamations as to what the family should do, getting his meals made, not doing the washing up, etc. So, yeah.
And also, do they pick a personality type to marry? For example, would you have suspected anything in your husband before you married him?
I probably wouldn't, but I would suggest that they possibly identify a vulnerability, maybe. The ladies I deal with are lovely. They are lovely women. You know, for the want of a better word, I haven't really dealt with any bitches, if you excuse my language. You know, they are really nice women. And sometimes they might have in their background the dynamic of an abusive parent and a non-abusive parent, and they would maybe possibly be the victim in that situation, and then they go into another relationship. So I had a fairly challenging mother, shall we say, And so I needed rescuing from that. So he came in with his night and white charger. I thought, great, go with him. And then I just kind of carried out the same sort of dynamics in my new relationship. And that's the other problem as well. We're so used to being in bad relationships that we can go from one to the next and pick another bad relationship, which is something from the Freedom Programme. We try to break that cycle, to say you may not feel comfortable with what's boring because there's no dramas and there's no toxicity, but actually that's a much more healthy way of leading your life. So it's breaking that cycle of being used to being treated like that, if you like. Again, I'm only talking from my own experience. So a vulnerability, I would say, possibly, that they might identify, but beyond that, no.
I remember reading a book one time called Stalking the Soul. She's actually a French lady, and it was a very frightening book.
Yeah.
And in cases of abuse, it seems that they either pick a vulnerability, or if you have a light. When I say a light, that certain people are healthy, right, living creatures, and they're jealous of that, and they destroy it.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, completely.
So you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Well,
if you allow yourself to be.
Yeah, and I think it's looking at the warning signs as well, which is what else we do on the Freedom Programme, you know. So, yes, hi. Sorry.
I was the only male in
I feel so terrible. I know. I'm just
Sorry.
Not all men are like this.
It's all right. I've learned.
so
I've now
sorry.
learned about my abusive behavior.
I know it all.
What I think is it a case? I'm thinking, how do we get to the root cause? Because this has been going on for centuries. How do we get to the core? And I know, you know, like the politicians who say we need to deal with terrorism and the causes of terrorism. So we need to deal with domestic abuse and the causes of domestic abuse. How do we get to the core? Is it a cultural thing?
I think it's very, very difficult because it's been going on for years and years. I mean, you know, I don't know. It's how roles were previously, and I think possibly things have changed over the last 100 years. But there is still, I mean, for example, in the Second World War, you know, women had to come out of the homes and they had to go into the factories and help out like that. But after that, it was a political decision that they wanted them back out of those factories and back in the home, having babies and not being at work. So there was a number of propaganda films. There was a lot of, you know, a lot of the message of what you need to be the good wife. You know, there's the Good Wife Guide, which I sometimes read excerpts out of my Freedom Programme, which always gives us a little bit of a laugh. But there was that, they need to come back out from there so that the men obviously coming back from the war could go back into their jobs, etc. But I just don't know. It just seems to have been around for years and years and years. And then I suppose with the advent of, if you like, feminism and a women's right to go to work was fine, except, you know, with a lot of men, they thought, well, actually, that's nice. You can now go out to work and look after the kids and do the house and everything else. So there wasn't the seismic shift that we would have possibly liked to say, well, actually, yes, I'm doing this now, but I'm not doing that. So now it's like, we do this. I don't know. I think in answer, I don't know. It's the core beliefs. I don't know. It's television programmes, it's media, it's education, I think.
I think maybe I think there needs to be, when we've done the campaign, I think there needs to be more government intervention. I think otherwise it's not going to happen. I think if you're going to get married, if you're going to be involved in a relationship of any type, there needs to be more awareness that, you know, it can happen to you, and if it happens to you, get out as soon as possible.
You're absolutely preaching to the converted. I completely agree with you entirely. Yes.
I know this sounds a silly idea.
No?
Obviously, I'm in a group where we're trying to promote awareness of mental health. And you can talk. But I'm just wondering, do you know somebody who's a very good playwright who could talk about what you've described, being a middle class home, and put it on the telly? Now that
wouldn't it?
I think that, and you know, if you
I can find you one.
I mean, okay, I'm not saying I'm feasible. What I'm just trying to say is, I mean, I'm not being married, it's not just a thing, but abuse can come in various forms within the church and all sorts of things.
Anywhere.
Do you know what I mean? And I have to be honest, most people have been a victim of receiving none of it. However, I'm just thinking, if you know a playwright,
Yeah.
and not just in a working class background, what I'm just trying to say is this: if you've got something set in a middle class background, put that on a play for today.
Yeah.
I agree.
That would, I mean, the most classic one was Diana.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But she obviously didn't live long enough to get her point of view across.
Yeah.
I think that's a classic sign of being in a domineering relationship. I mean, I'm not blaming the Queen for this, but you know, but what I'm just trying to say, that was a classic example of somebody, her eating disorders, of being put down, or whatever. And somebody, I mean, the Duchess of Devonshire, there was this 18th century, you know, somebody said to me, it was a classic example. So if you could do that in a middle class, put that on the TV, that could actually, and you get some very good actors who are willing to do it, and it wins awards. That would be a good talking point.
I think we need to definitely, absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't mind, but you just.
I think it's a fantastic idea.
You put that on the TV,
Brilliant.
you get a good
Anything
playwright.
that would get the message out.
And preferably a man to write it, do you know what I mean? Because that doesn't, it's just not feminist, it's all women, all this, that and the other.
Yeah, I know.
Just put me lactulose in their teeth, thank you very much. I used to be a nurse, we dealt with it. But yeah, I'm just thinking
Good
that
idea.
might be
Brilliant.
a good male playwright.
Male playwright.
You know, because if it's a woman that, you know, CRA, well, crap, you know, but I just think that could spark off discussions.
I think that'd be excellent, yeah.
The nearest thing that ever came to it was Coronation Street some years ago, just a theme.
Yes.
Where he was riding her around the twist. I was nearly going around the twist looking at it.
Yes, soaps can be very good, as long as they handle it well.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think from my experience of it was as an outsider looking into a violent relationship. It was my half-sister. And I did have times where I thought, oh, why doesn't she just leave him?
Yeah.
But at the time, I was aware it was going on. I didn't know what extent it was because she never spoke about it.
Yeah.
And my dad and I would have conversations and say, why doesn't she just leave him?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until 2 years ago, after a 10-year, 12-year relationship with this man and 3 children, that she finally said enough is enough. And I think what I learned was you can give as much help and support to the person as you can, but they will only leave when they're ready to.
Yeah, you can't leave until you're ready. And that's something the ladies say to me, I feel so guilty, I wish I'd left sooner, I should have left sooner. I say, no. You leave as soon as you can leave, and that's it. Yeah, so I just take this question and then I'll do.
But it just prompts me with something I was thinking of.
Yeah.
If you have a friend or somebody you know that's that you suspect is in a domestic abuse situation, do you have any advice? If they don't naturally come and speak to you, do you have any advice about how to make that contact?
I think just some gentle prodding questions. I mean, gentle. How is he? How are things with him, etc. I mean, obviously, with me, I say, oh well, I used to have this happen, and that would usually get some information because when you talk about yourself, you're kind of freeing and enabling other people to say. I think just general. Nicely, gently probing questions, and then they can give forth as much as they want to, or not, as the case may be, and you might be surprised. I said to somebody the other day, how's Mark? And the tears, and the floodgates, and if I hadn't said, how's that? She may not have said to me at all, but I did, and she did, and so, that was good. Sorry.
Yes, I met a married man. And I didn't know he was married.
Yes.
But it was something you read about in books. It was love at first sight.
Yeah.
Portuguese. And it was only after some time I thought there must be something because he didn't look or appear to be not with somebody.
Yeah.
Anyway, I fell hopelessly in love with him. And he told me he was married and I told him. And then later, he lied because he took me out I was living in London, in Surrey, and he said he was picking up his newborn son, so that was another lie.
Yeah.
And it was like being caught in a web.
Yes, that's a
And
really good description of web. Yeah.
I trained as a singer. I wanted to be a concert singer.
Yeah.
And I gave it all up. In the whole time I was with him, I went to the cinema once.
Yeah.
I never went to the theatre or concert hall, which was my life.
Yeah.
And people kept saying to me, Sheila, can't you see what's happening to you?
Yeah.
And again, the word denial comes into it. He wasn't physically cruel. And I heard all the sob story about his first marriage, and I made up my mind, no way would I make him unhappy.
Right.
But then when I had to review, go through it all, and it was quite dramatic, I could see the manipulation.
Yes.
And I think manipulation is hinders.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
And that was 20 years wasted for me. It's not self-pity,
No, I
it's a
know.
fact.
Yeah.
And people used to ask me, the next door neighbour, where is Tony, where is he? And I used to make all the excuses under the sun.
Yeah.
He had his life, all to do with sport, and I wasn't that way inclined. And just one more thing, we used to entertain a lot, but there were people he knew, business people.
Yeah.
And one day, he was talking about what he was doing and all of it, and somebody said to me, well, Sheila, what do you do? And I had to get up from the table and go into the kitchen because I knew I would just completely break down.
Yeah.
But I was doing nothing.
Yeah.
And as you said, there comes a time when there's a decision.
Yeah.
And I remember him walking in one day, and I looked at him and I just said, I'm letting you go. It just came out.
Yeah.
But it took so long for
Yeah.
me to do it. You know, I don't bear manners, I can't do that. But again, if you're a vulnerable type, you try and
Yeah.
But I've learned a lot.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You are somewhat manipulated.
Yeah. Oh, and they're very good. They're very good at their manipulation. Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
You know,
It does.
builds
You don't
slowly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And always picking me up from this event, that event.
Yeah.
You know, when I was at work all the time.
Thank you so much for sharing that, though. No, that's really, thank you very much.
Actually, I was reading about behavioural problems
Yeah.
way back from the cavemen,
Yeah.
when they used to go out and fight for food, fight each other for the dead animal to bring back
Yeah.
for the woman
Yeah.
to put in the fire in the cave.
Yeah.
And slowly,
Not so different, is it? Yeah, absolutely.
men like to be in charge.
Yeah.
And I think it hasn't altered, and the reason that they do kick off or whatever,
Yeah.
women are now doing what they want to do, not what they want them to do.
Yes.
And I think,
Yeah.
I read a book about it, and I thought
That's
that is
fascinating.
so right.
Yeah.
Now they sit in front of a computer instead of going out fighting for food. Get home, they're so frustrated.
That's a fair point. Fair point.
The fast food is too close to
Sorry,
home.
Catherine, yes.
Have I not been able to head?
Oh,
Sorry, this
ladies,
question on behalf of someone,
Yeah, sure.
one of the people we support.
Yeah.
She's in a situation where her children, unfortunately, her husband has turned her children against her,
Yeah.
and because she fought back,
Yeah.
she stepped out, she
Okay.
stood up.
Yeah.
To the husband. It's interesting you mentioned when the police come to the door.
Yes.
It's charming. This was her life.
Yes.
So he's mad that she stood up to him, and now children have been turned against her, and she's ripped apart.
She's
Can't
very,
access
very.
her children.
How
What
old are
would you
the
advise?
old are the children?
Now 16, 13, and 9. I think 10.
Okay.
to be honest.
And how long ago did this happen? How long has she been
walked
out?
away about 18 months ago.
Okay, it's very raw. It's very early days, and those are difficult ages. I mean, they're a difficult age when you've got nothing going on and you're 14 or 16, etc. So you've got teenage angst and hormones, etc. And plus, they probably have to fall in behind him, don't they?
Yes.
They cannot stand up and say, you know, actually, I think you're wrong. I think Mum's right, because what they're doing is surviving.
Yes.
So. And it's heartbreaking to watch it, but they kind of, pin their colours to him because They have to. I mean, he will be manipulative and controlling to them. And they are probably fearful of him also, even if they don't admit so. I would say to her, give it time.
Right.
You know, to try and...
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Fear. How can she get help for the children? Because she can see what's going on. She's talking to the authorities, but unfortunately, he's manipulating the authorities, he's manipulating the children. And she said, my children need help. I need to, I cannot access my children, but he's manipulating everybody and seemingly getting away with it.
Yeah.
And the children, of course, are concerned. They're getting damaged.
Yeah.
And in the long term, like you said, one of them, 2 girls and a boy, she's terribly worried. And of course, she was a stay-at-home mom for 17 years in this marriage.
Yeah.
So she's had to go out and try to survive on her own. And she's never really done anything apart from the children. So you can imagine the effect of being ripped away from the children is tearing her into pieces, and she's devastated. How can she...
There are no easy answers other than to keep fighting the way that she is with the various organisations, with social services.
Yeah, but they don't
to try, and that is very common. It is very hard. It's very soul destroying. But all she can do is keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. I mean, I don't know what he's like as a father.
I mean,
if they haven't had much to do with the kids previously, they're usually pretty rubbish.
Yeah. Yes.
And then you know the realities of the requirements of looking after these 3 children after a while sometimes kind of wears off, and in essence he will still want to be getting at her about the children. So the reason he has the children now is because it will be the ultimate to, you know, break her in essence. All she can do is keep on fighting, keep on saying to the children, I am here for you, I would like to see you, and they can rant and whatever, and she just has to keep on doing it. There are no easy answers, and it's very difficult when you've got the authorities against you.
Yes.
So I'm unable to give, but by showing her tenacity with the children and with the agencies, I think give it time, it will turn out all right in the end, because they'll be, you know, living with him as well, seeing his true colours, etc. So, I mean, you know, I would say make an application for them to come and live with her, but the children are older, and you know the courts are going to listen to an extent to what their children say, and we're going to say but they're saying it because he's telling them to, and it is an uphill battle.
It is, but of course also because she's had to be living somewhere which is very different from their family
Precisely,
home. So
and they'll say
she's not in a position to really have the children come and stay with her, to be honest.
Yeah,
it's a tricky one.
It's a very tricky one, and unfortunately fairly common as well.
Really?
Yeah.
So keep fighting.
Hi.
Just a few comments. I wanted to say there have been movies that I've watched. Unfortunately, I can't remember the titles.
Yeah.
Wealthy people, some very poor, some middle class. But I think it's all about when the individual is ready, like he said.
Yeah.
Because they could see it, they could touch it, and they don't get the courage to leave, to actually go out and say, I'm going to talk.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I was going to say is, I've got somebody very close to me who is in a similar position, and when she sort of talked to me about what was happening in a marriage, this was just a few months after getting married, and I think culturally she felt like she would have let everybody else down, and also before she got married, everybody had tried to say to her, this is what we see, because she had a very good job, was living in a very nice area. And this guy was totally the opposite and kept bringing her down until she even moved areas so that she could match his standards and all this. And one particular night, she was chased out of the bedroom and told to leave my child, you will leave my child, and she leaves for her child. And I think I've made a mistake, so I just wanted to find out how I could correct it. Because I said, what he's going to do is try to make you feel very good the next day. And that's exactly what he did. He took her out for dinner.
Oh, yeah.
And said, oh, come on, very nice hotel, took her pictures, put them up on Facebook, and it was saying, my lovely wife. And she looked so sad and grinning, you know. And when it's somebody very close to you, you can't help but, and then I reacted.
Okay.
So I want to, because now she's closed off.
To you?
Yes.
Okay.
I've tried to say, oh, how are things going? Fine. And doesn't.
And that might well be the case. I was probably similar to that. There would be some days I wouldn't want to talk about it, wouldn't want to think about it, wouldn't want to accept it. I think if you feel that you've done, you've behaved badly or not handled it as well as you can, I think the only thing you can do is to be honest with her and to say, I'm sorry that I said X or that I was this. I want you to know that no matter what, I'm here for you, that I love you or care about you, etc. I suppose just to try and apologise for any damage that you might have caused inadvertently. That's all you probably can do. I don't know. I mean, I don't think you've done anything to...
What happened was the guy started phoning us, so many times texting us and being Mr. Nice. And I just thought, no, I can't respond being Miss Nice when I know what's going. Stop this. Stop texting me.
Okay,
and
fair enough.
She felt that we had gone in too fast.
She probably got a roasting. She probably got, what have you been telling your sister? Yeah, you've been putting your dirty laundry out there, and what yeah. So she'll have got a whoa from him, and she's probably thinking, oh God, batten down the hatches again, let's try and survive. So I imagine that's where it's at the moment, but you've just got to still just keep being a consistent support to her, because she's, probably feeling, I don't know, attacked at the moment. He will, my God.
She doesn't look happy at all.
No, well, she's not then. In her heart, and all you can say is, love you, I'm here for you. I love you and I'm here for you. And you did what you did, you said what you felt was right, and that will have helped her with her reality, but she may just be not feeling it at the moment, can't do it. I knew for 2 years before I actually threw him out that it was over, and I had to do something about it, but it took me 2 years to find the courage to do it. I couldn't do it before then. I don't know why I couldn't. If someone said to me, do it, I can't do it yet.
But also at that point of leaving, it's not over.
No.
That point of leaving is actually just the start. My sister went into a refuge for a period of time, and then she found temporary housing and then finally permanent housing with her 3 children. But that wasn't the end of her sort of struggle. The children went to new schools, so it's settling them into the schools. She's learning a lot more about her own sort of vulnerabilities. But more importantly, perhaps, is that her son, the middle child, has really been affected by this. He exhibits very similar violent tendencies that he saw from his father, and really her concentration at the moment is getting him access to help. He's been expelled from several schools now because of his behaviour, and for somebody to meet him, he's the sweetest, caring, most loving child, but he has that flip side of him because of what he's seen. So it's not all over once the person does decide to leave. Really, they need to get their strength together in that in-between period, so when they do leave, they can face the new challenges that it's going to bring.
But it's still better.
Absolutely.
It is still so much better, yeah. But you're right, there are a lot of problems that can be afterwards, yes.
One more question.
Yeah.
Is it that we've talked about the fact that the woman does not get the courage to leave? Is it that the society, it seems to me, even the family, the society has not given the female victim, in this case, the license to have the courage? Is it that there's something in there? And how do we address that?
Again, it's very, very difficult, with the family dynamics. Before I left, I did speak to aunts, and I did kind of, take some kind of inventory, if you like, of what the feelings were behind it. And as I say, people have a lot of, they bring their own issues and their agenda to it. I mean, I had been with my husband for 20 years, so he was the main part of the family, My sister really liked him most of the time. And she was sort of, oh no, oh no, because what about Christmas, and what about birthdays and things like that, without actually thinking it through about what I was going through. And I think you're right, I found it very hard because not everybody was saying, yeah, absolutely, that's not acceptable, you need to go. There was a kind of a range across the spectrum of people's advice and opinions, and also I'd been in a relationship where I'd been so conditioned about what everybody else thought about me and what he thought about me that actually I didn't particularly know what I thought about me. And so it was very difficult. I agree with you. I think it's very important that society gives permission and says, you do not have to be treated like that. It is not acceptable to be treated like that, and it is perfectly okay, reasonable and positively right for you to leave and to be free and to lead a healthy life and to set that example for your children if necessary. So I agree with you. Yeah, we need to a lot more.
I think, like you said, it's going into the schools. You can talk and talk and talk.
Yeah.
But and they are getting books in the libraries because I'm doing a cooking course, so I go to the library and I do by accident see these.
Yeah.
Because I've never been mad, but what is a healthy relationship after a lifetime of being conditioned?
Yeah.
The thing is, it's to go into the schools and actually act out relationships.
Yeah.
And if you act out in plays, now it's a neutral thing, so the kids don't necessarily have to bring their own agenda to it, but pennies might drop.
Yeah.
Do you know
And
what I
that's
mean?
what we're looking for, is pennies to drop.
I don't think it's
definitely.
stupid, but have you got contacting the Mothers Union? Now I know there are a bunch of...
I've contacted the Women's Institute.
Yeah.
And I went and did a talk for them. Because you have to do that to be included in their speakers book. And first of all, I got a letter saying no. And I thought, because it's not exactly marmalade, is it?
Oh, I know what you're trying to say.
But then I am going to give it a talk.
What I'm just saying, not just give a talk, what I'm just saying is, if you go to Mary Summerhouse, which is the headquarters of the Mothers Union in London, they're the headquarters of the Mothers Union. And if this could be adopted onto the agenda of the national Mothers Union speakers, and one of those things that is they have as one of their forums, because actually the Diocese of Guildford does support the battered wives in Guildford, and we have as well. We always give toys and things like that.
Brilliant.
But obviously that could be to a certain social dynamic.
Yes.
Obviously, people in the class, it's a lot work. It's a lot harder to come out because social status, all this and the other.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if they're doing it on a like a Guildford basis, if it could be adopted by Mary Summers House, then it's a small drop.
But we just need to keep, each as a little brick and it builds a wall.
And they are a women's group.
Absolutely.
And I mean, they've gone into prisons to support work in prisons.
Do you know, that brings me on to something, the statistic of the women prisoners at HMP Send, which is a women-only prison. 95% of the women in there have been subjected to domestic abuse at some point in their lives. 95%! Wow. And of course the other thing, a side issue, is that if a woman snaps and kills him, which happens, she will get a longer prison sentence because she will probably have used some sort of implement to murder. So then it's premeditated, so she will get a longer prison sentence. Whereas if he goes and loses his temper and strangles her, then he can say, oh, it was in the heat of the moment, etc. And statistically gets a lower prison sentence. So that's the other thing I was telling my ladies is, for God's sake, leave before you kill him. Because otherwise you'll be in prison and he'll be looking after your children.